The place was hopping with music and loud conversation, and every once in a while the lights would turn off. Each time the lights would go out, the place would erupt into cheers. However, when the revelers saw the nun, the room went dead silent. She walked up to the waiter and asked, "May I please use the restroom?" The waiter replied, "Okay, but I should warn you that there is a statue of a naked man in there wearing only a fig leaf." "Well, in that case, I'll just look the other way," said the nun. So the waiter showed the nun to the back of the restaurant. After a few minutes, she came back out, and the whole place stopped just long enough to give the nun a loud round of applause. She went to the waiter and said, "Sir, I don't understand. Why did they applaud for me just because I went to the restroom?" "Well, now they know you're one of us," said the waiter. "Would you like a drink?" "No, thank you, but I still don't understand," said the puzzled nun. "You see," laughed the waiter, "every time someone lifts the fig leaf on that statue, the lights go out. Now, how about that drink?" A man asked his doctor if he thought he'd live to be 100. The doctor asked the man, "Do you smoke or drink?" "No," he replied. "I've never done either." "Do you gamble, drive fast cars, and fool around with women?" inquired the doctor. "No, I've never done any of those things either." "Well then," said the doctor, "what do you want to live to be 100 for?" A teacher noticed that little Johnny, who was sitting at the back of the class, was squirming around, scratching his groin, and not paying attention. She went back to find out what was going on. Little Johnny was quite embarrassed and whispered that he had just recently been circumcised and he was quite itchy down there. The teacher told him to go down to the principal's office. The principal told him to telephone his mother and ask her what he should do about it. He did, and returned to his class. Suddenly, there was a commotion at the back of the room. The teacher went back to investigate, only to find little Johnny sitting at his desk with his private part hanging out. The teacher demanded, "I thought I told you to call your mom." Little Johnny replied, "I did, miss, and she told me that if I could stick it out till noon, she'd come and pick me up from school." A husband and wife are out to dinner for their anniversary. The husband raises his glass and toasts to 50 wonderful years together. "It may not have always been easy, but I have always loved you and been honest with you. And I hope you have always loved and been honest with me as well." The wife replies, "Well, remember when we were first married and you lost your job? Well, I went down to the bank and slept with the broker in order to get an extension on our mortgage." The husband, shocked, says, "Honey, that was a long time ago and you did it for us. I forgive you." The wife continues, "Well, remember when you started your business, we didn't have health insurance, and you needed that surgery? Well, I slept with the surgeon, and he did it for free." The husband, again shocked, says, "I can't believe I'm just hearing about this, but I understand that you did it for me. I love you and I forgive you for sleeping with those two men." The wife replies, "Here's the thing. Remember last year when you were running for Rotary Club president, and we're trailing by 32 votes. After being away on business, Tim thought it would be nice to bring his wife a little gift. How about some perfume? he asked the cosmetics clerk. She showed him a bottle costing 50 sours. "That's a bit much," said Tim. So she returned with a smaller bottle for 30 Gs. Urs. "That's still quite a bit," Tim complained. Growing annoyed, the clerk brought out a tiny $15 bottle. "What I mean," said Tim, "is I'd like to see something cheap." The clerk handed him a mirror. Robert, who is 85, married Jenny, a lovely 25-year-old. Since her new husband is so old, Jenny decides that after their wedding, she and Robert should have separate bedrooms, because she is concerned that her new but aged husband may overexert himself if they spend the entire night together. After the wedding festivities, Jenny prepares herself for bed and the expected knock on the door. Sure enough, the knock comes, the door opens, and there is Robert, her 85-year-old groom, ready for action. They unite as one. All goes well. Robert takes leave of his bride, and she prepares to go to sleep. After a few minutes, Jenny hears another knock on her door. And it's Robert. Again, he is ready for more action. Somewhat surprised, Jenny consents for more coupling. When the newlyweds are done, bids her a fond good night and leaves. Jenny is set to go to sleep again, but you guessed it, Robert is back again, and is as fresh as a 25-year-old ready for more action. Once more, they enjoy each other. But as Robert gets set to leave again, his young bride says to him, "I am thoroughly impressed that at your age you can perform so well and so often. I have been with guys less than a third of your age who were only good once. You are truly a great lover, Robert." Robert, somewhat embarrassed, turns to Jenny and says, "You mean I was here already?" A young man and his date were parked on a secluded back road, some distance from town. Just as they were about to have an act, the girl paused and said, "I really should have mentioned this earlier, but I'm actually getting $20 for this." The man hardly paid her, and they went ahead with it. Afterward, as they sat in the car, the man rolled down the car window and stared out the window in silence. "Why aren't we going anywhere?" the girl asked. The man turned to her and said, "Well, I probably should have mentioned this before, but I'm actually a taxi driver and the fare back to town is $25. A woman had terrible dreams. One night, she woke up screaming at the top of her voice. She screamed, "Oh my goodness, honey, help me, honey." Her husband woke her up and said, "Baby, what's wrong?" She said, "Honey, I just had the worst dream." Her husband asked, "What did you dream about?" She said, "I dreamed that I was at the top of Niagara Falls. I was looking down at the falls and I got dizzy. I started falling down and some kind gentleman threw out a long rope to me. I grabbed hold of that rope and that's what saved me." Her husband said, "Yeah, I know, darling. Now turn loose of that rope and let's go back to sleep." The king wanted to go fishing. He asked the royal weather forecaster for the forecast for the next few hours. The palace meteorologist assured him there was no chance of rain. So, the king and queen went fishing. On the way, the king met a man with a fishing pole riding a donkey and asked him, "Are the fish biting today?" The fisherman replied, Your Majesty, you should return to the palace. I expect a huge rainstorm any minute now. The king, confident, said, I hold the palace meteorologist in high regard. He is an educated and experienced professional. Besides, I pay him a lot. He gave me a very different forecast, and I trust him. So, the king continued on his way. However, not long after, torrential rain began pouring from the sky, soaking both the king and queen. Furious, the king returned to the palace and fired the meteorologist on the spot. Then he summoned the fisherman and offered him the prestigious position of royal forecaster. The fisherman said, Your Majesty, I know nothing about weather forecasting. I just rely on my donkey. When I see its ears drooping, I know for sure it's going to rain. And so, the king hired the donkey. And thus began the tradition of hiring dumb asses to hold influential positions in government. Mr. Smith goes to the doctor complaining about a constant headache. The doctor runs some tests and tells the guy, Take these pills for a month. These are very potent. So you take one of these one day, and then skip a day, and then take another one the next day, and skip the next day, and so on for a month. You can visit me after a month. A few months go by, and the doctor runs into the man's wife in the market one day. Mrs. Smith, how nice to see you here. How are you doing, and how's your husband's headache now? The wife replied, Oh, you haven't heard. My husband passed away a couple of months ago. The doctor was surprised. I'm sorry to hear that. That's unfortunate. Was it the headache? I thought the pills I gave him were very strong and should have worked. There was nothing wrong with the pills. They worked just fine, replied the wife. It was all the skipping that killed him. An elderly woman arrives at the supermarket checkout line with bread, milk, peanut butter, and 21 cans of cat food. The cashier says, Got a lot of cats at home? Smiling. The woman replies, Cats? Oh no, dear, I'm allergic. These are for my husband. It's all he will eat. The cashier, shocked, says, You feed him only cat food? He'll die. The woman snaps back, I've been feeding him cat food for 50 years, and he's absolutely fine. Thank you very much. Mind your own business. A week later, the same elderly woman approaches the same cashier with bread, milk, peanut butter, but no cat food. The cashier asks, No cat food this week? The woman replies, No, my husband's dead. The cashier says, I'm sorry, but I told you eating nothing but cat food would kill him. The woman, smirking, says, For your information, it wasn't the cat food. He was licking his balls and fell off the roof. While a soldier was deployed overseas, he received a breakup text from his girlfriend. In the message, she admitted that she had been with 2 other guys while he was away and wanted to end the relationship. To add insult to injury, she also asked him to delete the photo she had sent him. Not one to let the situation get the best of him, the soldier decided to have a little fun with it. He went around to his fellow soldiers and asked them for all the photos they had, of exes, flings, or just random women they had on their phones. After collecting more than 25 photos, he texted them all to his ex, along with hers, and sent this message. "I'll delete your photo, like you asked, but I can't remember which one it is. Could you let me know which one's you, so I can take care of it?" This couple go to an agricultural show way out in the countryside a fine Sunday afternoon and are watching the auctioning off of bulls. The guy selling the bulls announces the first bull to be auctioned off. A fine specimen. This bull reproduced 57 times last year. The wife nudges her husband in the ribs and comments, "See? That was more than once a week." The second bull is to be sold. Another fine specimen, this wonder reproduced 120 times last year. Again, the wife bugs her husband. "Hey, that's more than twice a week. What do you say to that?" Her husband is getting really annoyed with this comparison. The third bull is up for sale. And this extraordinary specimen reproduced 365 times last year. The wife slaps her husband on the arm and yells, "That's once a day, every day of the year. How about you?" The husband was pretty irritated by now and yells back, "Sure, once a day. Great. But you ask the auctioneer if they were all with the same cow." An old lady went into a bar in Ibiza and saw a man with his feet propped upon a table. He had the biggest boots she'd ever seen. The old woman asked the man if it's true what they say about men with big feet being well endowed. The man grinned and said, "Sure is, little lady. Why don't you come to my apartment and let me prove it to you?" The old woman considered she might never get an offer like this again, and was curious to find out for herself, so she spent the night with him. The next morning, she handed him a $50 note. Blushing, he said, "Well, thank you. I'm really flattered. Nobody has ever paid me for my services before." "Don't be flattered," she replied. "Take the money and buy yourself some boots that fit. Women can be so cruel." A guy was walking through the Sahara Desert, desperate for water, when he saw something far off in the distance. Hoping to find water, he walked towards the image, only to find a little old man sitting at a card table with a bunch of neckties laid out on it. The guy asked, "Please, I'm dying of thirst. Can I have some water?" The old man replied, "I don't have any water, but why don't you buy a tie? Here's one that goes nicely with your shirt." The guy shouted, "I don't want a tie, you idiot. I need water." "Okay, don't buy a tie. But to show you what a nice guy I am, I'll tell you that over that dune there, about 5 miles down, there is a nice restaurant my brother runs. Go over that way. They'll give you all the water you want." The guy thanked him and walked away towards the dune, and eventually disappeared. 3 hours later, the guy came crawling back to where the old man was sitting behind his card table. The old man said, "I told you, about 5 miles over that dune. Couldn't you find it?" The guy rasped, "I found it. They wouldn't let me in without a tie." A game warden was driving down the road when he came upon a boy carrying a wild turkey under his arm. He stopped and asked the boy, "Where did you get that turkey?" The boy replied, "What turkey?" The game warden said, "That turkey you're carrying under your arm." The boy looks down and said, "Well, looky here, a turkey done roosted under my arm." The game warden said, "Now look, you know turkey season is closed, so whatever you do to that turkey, I'm going to do to you. If you break his leg, I'm going to break your leg. If you break his wing, I'll break your arm. Whatever you do to him, I'll do to you. So, what are you going to do with him?" The little boy said, "I guess I'll just kiss his A and let him go." The first one married a woman from Minneapolis and said to her, "When I get back from work, I want the house to be clean and tidy." He didn't see any changes on the first day, but on the second day, the house was clean and tidy. The second brother married a woman from Dallas and said to her, "When I get back from work, I want the house to be clean, the laundry done, and have food ready on the table." On the first day, he didn't see any changes, and not on the second day either. But on the third day, it was as he had asked. The third brother married a woman from Detroit and said to her, "When I get back from work, I want the house to be clean, the laundry done, and have food ready on the table." On the first day, he didn't see anything, and not on the second or third day either. On the fourth day, he could see a little bit with his left eye, and had just enough mobility in his right hand to make himself a sandwich.